Finding peace in the mind. And each of those words has a certain invitation to them. Finding is a verb, it's a practice. And finding something suggests a couple of possibilities. That there is already something to find, and that something is perhaps what brought you here today. A deeper knowing that something worthwhile is worth finding. The second part is there's a process to finding that thing that's there. And the thing that we're looking for, the theme of the day, it's called peace. And all of us know it's there and believe it's there, or else we wouldn't be here. And we've all tasted it, experienced it, found it before. And there's something joyous and alive about experiences of peace. And where do we find it? In the mind. That's where we start. We start in the mind because the mind is often one of the least peaceful places we know. The constant stream of thoughts which just keep on coming like a rushing tsunami. It bowls us over with its accompanying strong emotions. Our thoughts and our emotions bowl us over and we become attached to them. And the world as we experience it out there is not so peaceful. And over that, we have less control than we do over what's happening in what we call the mind. And so the place we start is, as Leslie said, working with the mind. So finding peace in the mind is the first step. And we do that by centering, grounding ourselves in what we call the moment, the now, the time and the place. And because the mind goes off into its thinkings and its accompanying feelings and emotions, ideas, commentaries, judgments, projections, identifications, stories about I, me, and mine, stretching infinity of all the past and what's happened to us, the infinite imagined catastrophic events that lie to infinity in the future. It's easy for the mind to go off because there's lots of stuff to think about. And yet, inside, we've all tasted this thing, peace or stillness or quiet or rest, ease. So because the mind goes off, we anchor ourselves in the now using things which are always available to us, like the body and the breath. And just at this moment, recognizing that they're not really separate. We'll be doing a body scan later, but for now, let's just take this path. I'm just noticing the body as the breath and the breath as the body. And there's actually no separation between the two. Body and breath are just words. And tuning into the experience of the body breath. The experiencing, ing, the active verb of breathing. And noticing if the mind is wanting to get involved, as it always does in everything, with its stories and ideas and judgments, etc., etc. And if you notice that your attention is off into some content of mind, come back to the experience of the body breath as it is. Part of finding peace is not resisting anything, because the moment we resist, we're in opposition, and the moment we're in opposition, we're fighting, and fighting is war. So being aware of any resistance you have to any aspect of your experience in this moment. Doesn't mean you have to like that ache or that discomfort or that emotion. Not resisting just means seeing things as they are. And that's the first step to finding inner peace. And noticing when we don't resist the contents of the mind, be they thoughts or feelings, we notice their impermanence. Thoughts seem to bubble up, the waves, they build, they crest, and then they disappear, even if they do crash. They always go to be replaced by another wave, a ripple. And the power of mindfulness is the capacity to not keep on shaking and adding to and letting the stories run away, which they will do. In fact, the practice of mindfulness at its core, at its heart, core and heart are the same. At its core, the mindfulness practice allows us to just see the activities of the mind as bubbles, as ripples, as passing clouds in the sky. We don't need to attach to them. It's a choice. The moment we notice them in what seems to be over there, we've got a little distance, and in that distance, that gap, in that observing a thought or a feeling, we can choose our response. We can close the pop up. We can choose not to go to war with ourselves. And we can trust that the breath, as it always does, when we don't agitate the mind, the breath settles into its own natural, peaceful essence, which is peace. And we can choose where we put our attention and shifting away from the mind. We think of awareness and mindfulness as a spotlight that's lighting up a stage, as if there's an inner play going on. So let's shift the spotlight You are the director of lighting. And let's shift that spotlight to the awareness of the rising and fall of the chest with the breath. Bringing your attention to the cycle of the breath. There's a pause, the in breath, another pause, the out breath, and it repeats. And with the spotlight of attention, we're not expecting that the other players on the stage disappear completely. They don't. And somehow they're in the wings. The scenery's still there. There may be other actors or actresses who are off having unheard side conversations. The thoughts and the feelings are not gone, but somehow they're not centered in the middle of the spotlight anymore. The awareness has chosen a different place. And it's no accident that the heart is right beside the lungs. There's a way of finding peace in the mind by not attaching to all the pop-ups. Mindfulness allows us to see that we don't need to believe every thought. We don't need to take every thought as the truth. We don't need to take every feeling as a fact, to cling to them, to concretize them. We can just sit in the awareness that I can shift my attention to the heart and other places. But when we go finding peace, not so much of a frantic hunt with spotlights and plans and digging equipment and forcefulness or striving. It's more a matter of allowing peace to emerge from underneath and inside and beyond the noise of the mind. And in the stillness of the quiet, if we listen carefully, we can hear the whispers of the heart. In the stillness of the mind, if we listen, we can hear the whispers of the heart. And the heart is tender. It's easily wounded and bruised. And so the old way is to get into fighting to try and protect it and build up walls and get into battle with ourselves to stop ourselves from feeling what is already here. And we put up these walls of thoughts and justifications and ideas and rationalizations and projections and fantasies and I me's and minds. And the walls get higher and thicker. And we say, oh, I've protected it. But remember that we've walled ourselves off from ourselves, from the very source of the healing. Because if the wounds, the distress, distractions, the noise, the irritability, the conflict, the tensions are in the heart, we have to be in the heart and allow the heart to heal itself with its own being and essence. And as we tend the heart, the word tend and attention have the same root. Attend, tenderness. There's a gentility required. And so we settle in with intention and we begin to have found the peace that was always there. It's never gone away. It could never have gone away. If it had gone away, we'd never be able to find it. It's always there. So we create the conditions in which it emerges. I don't grow the garden. I tend the soil and the seeds. I create the condition in which the garden grows. And in the heart is also a certain kind of energy. And it's surrounded by the first part of the breath, which is called inspiration. Out breath, expiration. And every breath, every moment, our hand is on the door of finding peace. Come back to the human spirit, spiritus, inspiration. We become inspired by the breath. We become inspired by capacity to come back to the centered place of peace. There's no expectation that the matters of the day, the doings, are going to go away. There's no expectation that things aren't about to change in any moment, both externally and internally. Mindfulness is not about emptying the mind. It's not about dropping out and excluding. It's about dropping in and leaning into. And the first step of becoming more settled as step one. And then from this place of greater peace, ease, groundedness, centeredness, once we open the room of the heart and the spirit, we find a cornucopia of gifts. Ease, relaxation, joy, gentility, compassion, love, humility, creativity, the capacity to let go and just be. And we can bring all these gifts with us on the journey in the world out there. And we can sum it up by talking about mindfulness as the quality of my being while I'm doing my doing. How am I being while I'm doing my doing? Especially if the doing is challenging and the mind is wanting to control it all. There's a certain quality we can bring in addition to the state of mind, so that when I do my doing, I'm doing it in a way that involves all of me. The fullness of our humanity. And this is the quality of peace that we're going to bring to the rest of the day. Through all the practices today, and we're going to be doing a range of them. And during times of transition, as we have now, we can notice the quality of the mind and the heart, spirit, and staying present as best as we can, because the mind will want to either go back and grab something from the last half hour, or maybe jumping ahead into wondering about what's coming. This capacity to stay present gives a fullness to our lives. And so if your eyes have been closed, please feel free to open them as we transition into a walking meditation, a walking mindful practice. There's only 4 positions that the body can be in.